What's up, guys? It's Hussien Jabai of Jabai Performance here with our Personal Training Essential series discussing training phases that you can utilize with your clients. Check it out. First things first, I want to explain that these are kind of the phases or the standard phases that I like to utilize for my clients and myself. I'm going to assume that you've already assessed your client. That's going to be step number one. Number two, for me personally, is going to be moving more into the corrective side of things before we actually go through phases. This means if your client has any imbalances, any shoulder issues, hip issues, these are addressed. Now you can move toward the movement prep phase as you're doing the corrective side of things, but if there are a lot of imbalances, I like to address these first before actually going into a training program, a training protocol, a training regiment, or some sort of training split. We focus on our corrective side of things. Then we move more into the movement prep. So this could be body weight stuff. This could be some movement patterns, especially if they had corrective issues or had some movement issues and you had to correct it. Going more into a movement prep is going to help them as you start loading weight, as you start increasing training load, increasing the amount of exercises, the more complex exercises. It's just going to help as you progress. Now, discussing corrective phase and movement prep phase, realize this could take a couple of days, this could take a couple of weeks. Sometimes, depending on imbalances, depending on myofascial issues, movement issues, structural issues in general, this could take a couple of months. Depends on the client, depends on the individual. Moving forward past that, we get into our power, our strength, our hypertrophy, and our endurance. Now, when we look at whether we're starting with power first or starting with endurance first, working our way down or working our way up, some individuals like to start with endurance. It's lighter, the load's not as heavy, the intensity might not be as much. It might be a little bit easier to get into. It's easier to go body weight and do sets of 20 than it is to be utilizing a bar and going heavier and doing sets of 5 or whatever it might be for that phase or whatever phase they're starting with. So typically you'll see individuals start with the endurance side of things. Now, it might be an issue depending on the individual's work capacity. I might skip power. That might be more for athletes looking at 3 to 5 sets of 1 to 2 reps, looking at more of the complex, dynamic, speed-based exercises, hang cleans, power cleans, push presses, things like this. That's where you're going to be looking at power. But sometimes I'll start them with strength. That's kind of my standard go-to. Anything from 5 sets of 5, 5 sets of 6, 4 sets of 6. You kind of manipulate the sets. You might do 3 sets of 6 or 3 sets of 5, depending on the individual's work capacity. They might do 3 sets and be tired and fatigued, and then the 4th set is going to look sloppy. So I try to optimize and do based on their work capacity. And then I'll drift down to hypertrophy. That'll just be the next phase. I'm not saying we're leaving strength alone completely, but we're going to slowly transition into hypertrophy, and that can be another video where we talk about transitioning and then slowly drifting to endurance. Now, after endurance, after I work my way down and work on endurance, I like to work my way back up and not go from sets of 12, 15, and 20 back to sets of 1. I might do sets of 15 and then drift it back down to sets of 12, then drift it back down to sets of 10. And the concept behind that is, if you want your 10s to be better, get good at 15s, get good at 12s. And then once you go to 10s, then you might be able to squeeze out a little bit more reps. Now you're gonna have to get used to the weight. You're not gonna do sets of 15 with 225 and then do sets of 10 with 275 just off the bat. You might have to get used to that weight, that stimulus, that the taxing on the joints, on the muscles. But if you work on your 15s, work on your 12s, my concept is you'll get good at your 10s, get good at your 10s, you'll get better at your 8s, and you start drifting back down. So that's kind of how I work my way down to endurance, hypertrophy, then endurance, then work my way back up, endurance, hypertrophy, strength, and then power. And I kind of transition back and forth. Like I said, some individuals will kind of do what I did, go from power, strength, and work down to hypertrophy, then endurance, and then work their way back up, endurance, hypertrophy, strength, and then power. Some individuals work their way down and then completely transition or restart and then go back to power. That's fine. Depends on the individual, depends on the coach, depends on kind of how you see things for your specific client. Just personally for me, I go down or go toward endurance and then work my way back up. That's just me. After you start power, after you start going through your program, you're not going to transition back to a corrective phase. You're not going to transition away from load, away from that kind of stimulus. You can, depending on injury, but I actually utilize corrective when we're looking at prehab, rehab, before training sessions, after training sessions. We might use different exercises. If someone's injured or has imbalances, we might use a different exercise or a variation, but we're not going to go into a corrective phase. We're not eliminating all other stimulus specifically for the corrective side of things or working on imbalances. We're working on those as we go. I hope y'all got a lot out of this Personal Training Essentials series episode talking about training phases. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to send me an email at jabaiperformance@gmail.com or feel free to comment below. I appreciate you guys viewing, and until next time, my name is Hussien Jabai of Jabai Performance, and this is our Personal Training Essentials series.